Wow, I was not expecting this to happen. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin. I got to be honest, I'm pretty surprised by this move by the Boston Red Sox because I really wasn't expecting the Sox to be wheeling and dealing in this part of the season, but here they are. They are wheeling and dealing. If you haven't heard already, the Red Sox this morning made a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers. So what we're going to do in today's video is we're going to dissect and discuss every single part of this trade and try and determine whether or not we think this is a good move for the Boston Red Sox. Because to be totally honest with you, my initial reaction to this trade for Boston was kind of iffy. I didn't know if I liked this move by this Red Sox team. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the official trade this morning was the Red Sox trading Quinn Priester to the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for their number 7 prospect, Yafairy, a competitive balance round A draft pick, a player to be named later, and cash considerations. Again, you look at it and you say, well, why would the Red Sox trade Quinn Priester, right? They built up all of this depth that really was necessary for the Red Sox in terms of starting pitching for this season. Quinn Priester may have not made the major league team, but you're seeing how that depth is sort of trying to keep this Red Sox team afloat or even really, really good, right? Sean Newcomb looked good. Hunter Dobbins looked good. Richard Fitz so far this season has looked pretty good. We'll see how he looks tonight, but you need that depth to get through a season. Quinn Priester, in my opinion, could have been a legitimate major league starter, right? You saw in spring training some struggles, but he came into spring stronger. His velo was up. There were things he certainly needed work on, but he still, to me, looked like at some point he was going to be a legitimate major league arm. I was always expecting Priester to get some starts at the major league level this year and impact this team. So initially you sit there and you say, what are we doing, right? Getting rid of a guy who I think in a lot of people's opinions could have been a legitimate big league arm, a guy who could be a legitimate big league arm in the rotation after seasons where the Red Sox have been tanked because they didn't have any pitching depth. And 3, just a nice dude, right? I've met this guy a couple of times in Worcester. He's a really, really nice guy, a great personality to have in the Red Sox clubhouse. So a lot of reasons why the Red Sox may not have made the right move here, but we really got to dissect and look at what the Red Sox actually got back to really make that determination. When we're looking at the individual parts of this trade for Boston, I think outside of everything else, the one thing that stands out to me in terms of why this deal may have been made by the Red Sox is that competitive balance pick we mentioned when we were talking about the trade as a whole. And the reason I say that is because this is actually a really solid pick for the Boston Red Sox. Because it's a round A draft pick, that means it's in between the first and second rounds. Basically, what I'm saying here is the Boston Red Sox are going to have, whether depending on how you look at it, either the last pick of the first round or the first pick of the second round. Specifically, this pick is the 33rd pick in next year's draft, worth $2.4 million in slot value. The Red Sox this season are going to get a fairly decent draft pick because of their record last year, but still, having 2 draft picks basically in the first round is an absolutely fantastic place for the Red Sox to be, especially considering they're hopefully going to be really competitive over the next couple of years, and that draft number is going to continue to get lower and lower, right? As they continue to get better and better, they're going to get lower and lower in the first round. So to take advantage of the idea of, hey, you'll probably have the 16th, 17th pick in this year's draft, but you're also going to have the 33rd pick as well as a second round pick, and on top of that, you're also getting the comp pick for Nick Pivetta, which is in the 4th round. So in the first 4 rounds of this year's draft or even next year's draft, I don't exactly know which draft this competitive balance pick is going to take effect. My guess is it would be this season, which would be absolutely fantastic. And if it is this season, you're talking about 6 picks in the first 4 rounds of this year's draft. That is absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? To have that many picks in a draft year where you're potentially next year and the year after that going to have less picks than normal, that's absolutely fantastic. You're doing a fantastic job here of building up the pipeline while also still trying to have a competitive team. And then obviously the second thing that stands out pretty immediately in this trade is the fact that the Red Sox got the Brewers' number 7 prospect. And that's Yafairy, once again, just to jog memories here. And I apologize if I absolutely butchered that name. You guys know names aren't exactly my strong suit on this channel, but either way, Rodriguez was signed back in 2023. He was the biggest signing of that year's class for the Milwaukee Brewers. And the 19-year-old was pretty solid last season in his first season stateside in professional baseball. Hit a 250 average, a 343 on base percentage, and a 383 slug in 110 games in low A ball. Good for a 117 WRC plus, 17% better than the average hitter in low A. Now, there wasn't a ton of crazy pop, but he still had 7 home runs in 110 games with 23 doubles. And I think he just had some really solid contact overall, right? The average wasn't incredible, but it was still pretty solid, right? He had a very solid season last year. Now, when it comes to his scouting report, the standout trait, at least last season, that MLB specifically mentions is his ability to control the strike zone. There definitely was still a healthy amount of swing and miss. It was up to 23.8% in 24, but he was still getting on base a decent amount. Again, you go back to that 343 on base percentage being almost 100 points higher than his average. He was a real threat in the batter's box to make sure he got to first base. His walk rate was nicely above 10% at 12.2%. And what he kind of profiles out to be is more of a contact forward hitter with average power. You combine the two of those, and that's still a very productive major league player, right? If you can be a guy who's consistently getting on base and hitting, 10, 15 home runs a year at the major league level, that feels about average, right? I'm not going to look into the statistic because I just want to record this video, but that feels like it's right around average. That's still a very productive bat in the back end of an order, or even the front end of an order, depending on how much he's actually getting on base. And I think that's why he ended up getting paid as much as he got paid. Now, in terms of the defense, yeah, it's not exactly incredibly fantastic. Everyone who comes out of these international free agent pools feels like they're a shortstop or a center fielder, right? You're signing these guys at 16 years old. A lot of them are the best players in their area, best players around them. So they're always going to be center fielders or shortstops. That doesn't end up always being where guys end up at the major league level. For Rodriguez, right now, he doesn't really profile out to be a center fielder. He's a little bit slow on his feet, a little bit below average when it comes to his speed. He still gets solid reads, but most scouts believe he's going to end up being a right fielder or a left fielder because of that, and because of the fact that he doesn't have an overpowering arm in the outfield. It's basically just a pretty accurate one. So pretty average defender, potentially a plus defender. The good news here with Rodriguez is that he's incredibly young, right? We're talking about a guy who's 19 years old. There is a ton of time for the Red Sox to take him in and develop him into potentially something more, right? You kind of see the pieces of a really, really interesting prospect getting put together here with Rodriguez. A high walk rate, a pretty decent ability to control a strike zone, decent contact, pretty decent power, right? You put all these in, and if you can excel in a couple of these, all of a sudden, you're a pretty exciting prospect. So I actually really like the idea of going out and getting a guy like this, and I have to imagine the Brewers came to the Red Sox for this as opposed to the Red Sox going to the Brewers, but to get a guy like this is pretty exciting. Again, for Quinn Priester, you're talking about the number 7 prospect in the Brewers system. That's not exactly something to shake your head at. Then obviously you've got the player to be named later and the cash considerations, and it's always nice to have that sort of in your back pocket, right? You see a guy that you like in the Brewers organization, maybe not a top 25, 50 guy, maybe someone in low A that, maybe hasn't been excelling super well in the Brewers system, but you see something that they might not see, and you grab that guy later. I have no idea who that guy's going to be. I don't know where he's going to play. I have no idea, right? That's just sort of a mystery to be figured out at a later date, but it's always nice to have in your back pocket. And of course, it's always nice to get cash, right? Cash is king, and it's always nice to get a little bit of something on the back end. Not that that really made a big impact on this trade. I think without the cash considerations, this trade still gets done. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there and you're looking at what the Red Sox got from Quinn Priester, and you go from, wow, I can't believe the Red Sox traded a potential major league starter to, hey, top prospect in the organization of the team you just traded for, essentially first round draft pick, we'll say first to second round draft pick, a player to be named later, and a little bit of cash. And that's a pretty good haul for a guy like Quinn Priester, who, you really break it down, may not have had a legitimate part of this roster going forward. And I also think that's a really, really big reason why the Red Sox made this deal. I don't think it's too much of a coincidence that right after the night where Hunter Dobbins makes his major league debut, he goes out there and he looks really solid, right? He doesn't look fully polished, but he looks really solid on the mound. The Red Sox go out there and they make this trade. I think that's a little bit too much of a coincidence. What I think may have happened here, and I have no inside information, I'm just simply a fan dissecting a trade, but what, in my opinion, you look at all the evidence here and you say, okay, possibly the Red Sox took a look at what their depth is looking like starting pitching-wise, right? You're getting Bayo back pretty soon here. Giolito's not too far behind him. That creates a depth chart of Richard Fitz, Sean Newcomb in the back end or in AAA, waiting for their opportunity to come up. Then you add in a guy like Hunter Dobbins, and all of a sudden, Quinn Priester kind of bumps himself down the totem pole a little bit. Plus, you've got guys like Sandlin and Conley Early who are starting their years in AA and could potentially impact this team at AAA and then maybe be close to Major League ready by the end of the year. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there and you're saying, well, wait a second. Does Quinn Priester really have a spot on the future of this Red Sox team, right? And I think that's what the Red Sox took a look at. And they said, okay, here's where we think Hunter Dobbins will be. Here's where we think Richard Fitz will be. And here's where we think Quinn Priester will be. And who's the odd man out here? It's Quinn Priester. I also think at the same point, too, this may have been something that had been brewing for a little bit, no pun intended there, but maybe the Brewers, who are desperate for starting pitching right now because they have been abysmal starting pitching-wise, came to the Red Sox and said, look, this is what we'll give you. And the Red Sox said, maybe, maybe not. And then saw Hunter Dobbins yesterday and said, okay, yeah, we'll make that deal, right? May have been just too good of a deal to pass up on. And I think that's ultimately where the Red Sox landed on this. And I think ultimately that's where I'm landing on this. I think initially, like I said, you sat there and you said, why would the Red Sox get rid of any starting pitching talent when we've seen over the past couple of years what a lack of pitching depth can do to a team over the course of 162 games, when we've seen throughout Major League Baseball all of these injuries start to pop up with legitimate impact big league starters, and how depth has carried teams to World Series wins like we saw with the Dodgers last year. Why would they make this trade? I think they saw what they had in terms of depth pieces outside of Quinn Priester. I think this deal is just simply too good to pass up on. And I think looking at it on paper, what you got for Quinn Priester is just simply too much to say no to, right? Again, let's go through it. Quinn Priester, a guy who, the Red Sox really liked, traded Nick York for, came in, and then there was some things where I wasn't exactly what you wanted out of Quinn Priester. And then you go and you get a legitimate top 10 prospect in this system. You go and you get a number 2, a first, second round draft pick. You get a player to be named later. You get cash considerations. And that's a pretty big haul for a guy like Quinn Priester. I genuinely can't believe the Red Sox got as much as they got for Quinn Priester, for being totally honest here. So as much as I like Quinn, and as much as I think he's a good dude, and as much as I still think this is a guy who can make a legitimate impact at the big league level and be an everyday starting pitcher, potentially a number 4, maybe a number 3, but realistically probably a number 4 or a 5, and that could have been valuable to the Red Sox. I think what they got back may have just been worth more to this Red Sox team, especially with where they're at with the rest of the depth in this organization, right? Again, Dobbins, Sandlin, Early, Fitz, you've got a ton of different names here that are going to be popping up over the next couple of years as well, that are currently absolutely killing it in minor league baseball, like Juan Valera. So I think the Red Sox just thought, okay, we're in a good spot. Let's make this move and really sort of bolster ourselves in other places where we may need bolstering. So ultimately, I think I like this deal. As much as I like Quinn Priester, I think I like this deal. I don't know that I would have done it if I was the front office person for the Red Sox, but I'm kind of happy Craig Breslow's there and did do this. So we'll see how this works out. But let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think? What do you think about this trade the Red Sox just made? Do you like it? Do you not like it? And what do you think its impact's going to be on the Boston Red Sox? Let me know all your thoughts. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit that like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton. It's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Like I said earlier this afternoon, if you guys want to listen instead of watch these episodes, best way to do is head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on the second video of the day. And as always, I will see you in the Red Seats.